Ende, building a life, an intro of sorts. You think you can escape it by moving half a world away. Dude, madness always follows you. I may have thought I had gotten away scot-free from the collapsing structures inside my head, dissonance making sand of the foundations. There would be no blistered fingers tracing and fighting to manipulate the indeterminate equations of life, not in the middle of Europe. I was safe in the warm intergluteal cleft of the continent, or so I thought. Then I met Mr. Sparrow. I was on my way home from the office. Coats and caps moved over the sidewalk. Snow was falling, and I had my frozen fish stick fingers buried deep in my pockets. When I was across the street from the pub, a voice told me to keep going, to just go home and make tea and read a book or watch TV or stare at the smooth white wall and seek out memories to visit. I crossed the street and went left to the pub instead of going right and making the lonely walk home. If only life were so simple, and I could say that entering the pub was the beginning of the end for me. There is only one end of the road, unfortunately. Standing before the door of the pub, I hit the brakes and recalled the highway of youth, heading straight out to the horizon. And you've got a big block under the hood that you can rev forever as you unwrap and chew up dreams while racing towards celebrated futures. Hell, why not make a few pit stops and take a detour or two or however many you want? Because that horizon is still far off until the day arrives when you realize the hot rod is really a beat-up four-banger and you've been going in circles in the parking lot of an abandoned mall. I pulled open the door to where dreams are born and far too many are laid to rest. The usual suspects were at our end of the bar. Gentleman gave me a hug and said it'd been far too long. Big D and Mr. Sad, Tony Bass, Pegleg Pete the proprietor, Shepherd Frank, my usual misfits were all there. And Mr. Sparrow had returned, and he was staring at me from the other end of the bar. Cut! No. Just snap your fingers. And months had passed since I wrote the above. And it was spring, and I was in New York City wandering around Manhattan at 5 a.m. I had told myself to get it down on paper, but you know how it is. I had written volumes as I walked around Frankfurt, but there are always buts. It is easy letting other things get in the way of what you really want to do, especially if those other things keep you fed and comfortable in a nice Wohnung. Time slips by or slips around your neck, and it becomes more difficult to get started, and eventually you forget where and how you wanted to tell the story. What was the story again? All those words in Frankfurt absorbed me, made me the story, and it was the same on Manhattan. The story took me to One World Trade Center and the 9/11 Memorial, reflecting absence, with 2,983 names inscribed on the parapets. So many people made past tense, and I watched the waterfall as I fell back to that day. So much death and so much more would follow, and the America I had known died that day as well. The planes flying into the towers were the Deus ex machina, quietly shutting, or perhaps slamming, the door on liberty. As with the towers, I couldn't stand the impact, and after a few minutes my feet got me away as quickly as I could get them going. I felt like something essential had been yanked out of me, something that made my homeland a foreign, alien land. But unlike the towers, I was still standing, though it was as if I had been shoved into the third person. I, or he, crossed a wide street and entered a cathedral of consumerism, and I almost offered alms at a shop selling shoes made in Wisconsin. But the sales guy had slicked back hair and thick, rubbery lips on a too-clean face. I didn't want to give that guy my money. It wasn't his hair or him, not really. Small, meaningless details can put me off. I thanked him for his time He didn't seem to mind seeing me leave, and I suppose his lack of interest in me was why I didn't buy a pair of walnut-colored cap-toes, and I made off like the Flying Scotsman and chugged through the lunchtime shoppers and eaters and exited to fresh air and a slight drizzle with no destination other than to get a closer look at the Statue of Liberty. I spent the 5 days I was there wandering, and sometimes I was in a London taxi, the only one in Manhattan. My wife was there for an off-site for her company. I came along as extra baggage, and she and I spent our evenings with P, who's my older brother or as near as you can get without sharing the same genes, and his wife J, she's a movie star, and their daughter L. We drank cocktails and wine, not Elle, of course, she's too young, and even played a game of Chihuahua-opoly one evening. We cooked dinners and talked and laughed about God knows what. And when P asked me about the biggest differences I saw between NYC and Frankfurt, I told him that it was the good mornings my wife and I received from strangers as I walked her to the office in Hudson Yards. The good mornings we got were hearty and genuine. I couldn't remember getting such Guten Morgen greetings in Frankfurt, where the greetings seemed perfunctory, merely following a stipulation in the social contract. I also told P that people dress better in Frankfurt, less casual, more sartorially refined, which probably has to do with the relatively high percentage of bankers and their lot in Manhattan. Those evenings helped me get back on track. Mr. Sparrow had made my life start to fade away again, and what upset me the most is that my reaction to seeing him again, to the few words we exchanged, showed me how fragile the construct of my life is. It had me down on myself for months. It's probably why I cut off
those long strands of oily mess.
Yes, those long strands of oily mess, as Raphael put it. On the last morning in New York, I ran one round of Central Park, and running is where the story starts. Running set me in motion and helped me to build a life, even if that life is fragile, is a dream. Then again, if life wasn't fragile, there wouldn't be much point to it, would there?